Welcome. After 4 years I thought I was over my wife's infidelity and my daughter's betrayal, part 1. I've been lurking these subreddits for a while and thought just reading people's stories would help me. Or if I found someone with a similar situation and I could see how they did it, but I guess my situation is unique. So here we go. First, let's be clear, I don't care if you think this is fake. I don't care if after I get it off my chest you guys want to give me hell. It happened, I thought I was fine, I thought I was over it, but after last weekend. It all came back, and that anger I had back then just came back in full force, and even though I'm back home with my fiancé, that anger towards my ex just won't go away. I spent years on anger management for what he did and the situation that was created, and I thought I was fine. Right now I just turned 39, I was 18 when I met my ex Marisol. During that time, I was a member of Latin K. I had been a member since I was 13 and always in and out of trouble. Marisol was a church girl. My grandmother would drag me to Sunday Mass, and when I saw her, for me, it was love at first sight. I asked my cousin, who was a friend of hers, if I could introduce us, but he refused. He didn't want me to mess with her, he didn't want me to ruin her. Have you ever met someone you wanted to be better to be with? Did you want to be that guy who was on the right track? That was her. When I found out she went to church almost every day, I would stand by the steps talking to her. I always accompanied her to church. She made me feel that I was not useless. One thing led to another and we started dating. For a year and a half I stayed away from the street life, got my GED, became a regular churchgoer and was thinking about the future when I was inadvertently drawn back to her. I was in a store and ran into someone I used to have problems with. They were talking about too much and I tried to ignore them, I swear I did. I let them talk and walked away, but then they hit me in the shoulder blade and I lost my head, I beat them up. They arrested me and suddenly it was like the things I was doing to make my life better disappeared. Marisol was mad at me, my grandmother kept bringing up my past mistakes and my cousin kept telling me she knew I wasn't going to change. My public defender saw that I was trying to better myself and, by the grace of Jesus, got me out of jail after a month. Despite being angry with me, Marisol visited me almost daily. A month after I got out, I found out I was going to be a father and I didn't want my son to have a dead father or a father in jail. We eloped, I went to trade school to become a mechanic and worked my butt off for my future family. When Luna was born, it was almost the worst day of my life. Marisol wouldn't stop bleeding. She went into shock and had to have a double hysterectomy. She was in the hospital for months and Luna became my world. I wanted her life to be the best, I wanted to give her the world. When Marisol was discharged, I promised her that our daughter would have a much better life than we did, and for years I kept that promise. I saved enough money to move to the suburbs, I became a homeowner, I was a Girl Scout leader, if you can believe it. I made sure Luna went to private school, I made sure she knew how to defend herself, and I always made sure I was the perfect husband. I didn't know my parents, I didn't have a positive male role model in my life, so I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. That's a lie, the parents on TV were my male role models, and I imitated them and the marriage they had on TV. As the years went by I had my own garage, my cousin became a pastor, my grandmother was still a pain in my body, my relationship with my wife was stronger than ever, I made sure to keep my body out of prison, but Luna hated me. Ever since she turned 13 she started hating me. She didn't want me to hug her, she would roll her eyes every time I told her I loved her. She would ignore me when I asked her about her day at school, it hurt me and Marisol saw it. She told me she's a teenager and I should let it go, she'd come back to me, for 2 years it was like that. So for her quinceañera, she wanted to go all out. She got everything she wanted and was still being disrespectful and, briefly, the old me almost came out just to put her in her place, but instead, I went to my cousin, vented my frustration and my doubts about being a good father, and he told me to leave her alone and said a prayer for me. I wanted a slideshow for the father-daughter dance. I have a portion of pictures of us together, but I realized I didn't have any recent pictures of us. She didn't want to have any taken. The last time I had pictures of her and me smiling with me was on her 13th birthday and they were on my daughter's broken tablet. I took that tablet, went to a repair shop and didn't care about the cost. I needed that tablet fixed, after 1 day and $300. The tech fixed it and I was happy. I knew her password, but I never bothered to invade her privacy. I just wanted those pictures, and when I opened the tablet and looked in the gallery, there they were. My little girl, smiling and happy to be with me. I felt great. Then the instant messages popped up. It was my daughter talking to my wife. It was a long tease that she didn't want me to dance with her and it hurt, but as my wife said, she's being a teenager. Then she said something that destroyed me. She texted me saying why did she have to do the father-daughter dance with me since I am not her father. I felt my heart stop, I got dizzy, my mouth went dry and I needed to sit down. My wife responded that I raised her, I loved her and that makes me her father. But Luna responded by saying that my cousin is her father and that she was looking forward to her 18th birthday so she could tell me the truth and live with her real father. That she hated me, that she thanked Jesus that I am not her father. Marisol began to insult her, saying that it was a mistake for my cousin to tell her the truth 2 years ago and that the more they talked, the angrier I got. My wife lied to me for 15 years, my cousin who I trust with my problems with Luna and my fears of being a bad father. Not only did he do it to my wife, but he forced me to raise his son. I wanted to hurt them. I felt a mixture of rage, grief, pain. I wanted to scream, cry and die at the same time, if that makes any sense. I went into a dark place and, in order not to make a fool of myself, I told Marisol that I had to focus on work so I could pay the quince and instead drove to Manhattan and saw my old public defender, who was no longer a low-level lawyer. He had a nice, expensive law firm near Midtown East. I was surprised that he remembered me, but apparently I was his first case as a public defender. We sat down and I told him everything. I handed her the tablet and when she turned it on, the messages kept coming. Only this time, Luna was talking to my cousin, her real father, and telling him to give me a chance. That I was always there for her, but Luna told her that he was too. How it makes sense that they have so much in common, and she even called him Poppy several times in their conversation and he responded and told her she was his little girl. We went over our options and he asked me what I wanted to do and I told him I wanted to end it all. I wanted all the guilty parties to pay for their guilt and he asked me several times if that was what I wanted and I nodded. I also told him that everything had to be filed before the quince in 2 weeks. So we sat down and spent the next 12 hours on what needed to be done and I followed his instructions to the letter. I secretly put my business up for sale. I called the private school and told them I would not be paying for the upcoming school year. I closed the college accounts and the savings I had for Luna and prepared to put my house up for sale online. No one found out, I followed their instructions perfectly. There was only one thing I got sidetracked on, the quinceañera. That day went smoothly, the whole family was there, Luna was smiling, having fun. Marisol kept asking me if I was okay and I lied to her. It was hard to lie to her, since I met her, I never lied to her and during those 2 weeks, every time, I kissed her, I hugged her, I made love to her. It was hard not to yell at her, it was hard not to hate her, she knowingly let me raise another man's child. She was intimate with my cousin, a man I saw as my brother, my son's godfather, the godfather when I eloped, my confidant. So the rage was hard to suppress to say the least. When it came time for the father-daughter dance, I called her to center stage. She looked annoyed, but she came over, I blared the music and she smiled and it tore me apart to see her smile at me. For years I wanted to see that smile again and now I didn't want it. As we danced, I put on a slideshow. Pictures of the two of us and, towards the end of the song, screenshots of her text messages with her mother and her real father. Needless to say, this did not bode well. Marisol looked like she had seen a ghost, Luna kept staring at the big screen and my cousin looked at me with fear. Marisol ran to me and said that she could explain it to me and I told her that I had filed for divorce. That she could explain it in court, she grabbed my arm, pleading with me and I pulled away. I told Luna that I had left my body to give her the world, and now she didn't deserve it. I started to leave, not before telling my cousin that every time I saw him I was going to knock him out, then I knocked him out. The aftermath was hard. Marisol and Luna were at my grandmother's apartment. Her family was shocked and upset with her, they wanted nothing to do with her. Her father apologized to me. I don't know why. He never liked me even though I had turned my life around. That man hated me, but now he was the perfect husband and father, but only a few days before he was the former bad piece of work. My grandmother had the nerve to tell me the story of Abraham and how when he came back from battle 3 years later, his wife had a 1-year-old son and raised him as her own, and how I was to be like Abraham, so I told him to get the hell out of my house. Marisol came a few days later, crying as soon as she saw me, telling me it had been an accident. That when I was arrested she was very angry with me, and my cousin was there to comfort her, and one thing led to another and they were intimate. It only happened once, and since then she was faithful to me. She was willing to take a lie detector test to prove it. Then I asked her how long she knew Luna wasn't mine, and she started to cry more. The look she gave me told me she knew from day one, and I asked her to leave. She wanted to go to therapy, telling me that I was overreacting and that we could make it work. That it was in the past and that I had to get over it, that I am Luna's father, despite what happened, and that I let my temper get the best of me. I must have repeated, "Get over it," over a dozen times at full volume as I grabbed her things and threw her out the door. I called her a liar. I told her I never wanted to see her face again, and that the life she had built no longer belonged to her. A couple of weeks went by and she was still busting my phone. Not once did Luna try to contact me. Marisol was surprised to hear that I had sold my business. Even more so when she found out I was having an open house. She came in screaming, telling onlookers to get out of her house and pleading with me to get help. That he was ruining our marriage, that he had no right to sell our house. The house where we raised our son, and I told him that this house is full of lies. It's a house where I raised another man's son, and when I sell it, I'll give him half, and I ordered him to leave before I called the police. He was bluffing. All he had to do was play the victim and I would have been arrested, but he didn't. He complied. Shortly after that my cousin came to talk to me and I knocked him out, dragged him outside and locked the door. I refused mediation. Marisol wanted to reconcile, but I did not. I wanted a divorce and my lawyer filed for a quickie divorce, and within 3 months we were in Nassau County Court. I barely spoke to anyone during that time. I read horror stories about the court system, especially during the divorce process, but that didn't happen to me. I had a judge who was very fair. My lawyer took care of everything. First of all, Marisol's lawyer tried to talk about my past when I was in a band, as if my past was a reason for me to be a terrible husband and father, but my lawyer quickly shot that down and the judge chastised her lawyer for trying to embarrass someone who had turned her life around. My lawyer presented all the evidence and offered a lump sum alimony payment with the pending sales of the house and the business. At first Marisol kept asking me to reconsider, but I ignored her, and when she finally realized I would not budge she agreed. However, the real surprise came when it came time for child support. My lawyer presented all the text messages of Luna's conversation with Marisol, proving that not only did Luna know I am not her father, but she can't wait to be with her real father, saying she no longer has to live a lie. Marisol was completely caught off guard by this. My attorney then filed a motion to have my name removed from Luna's birth certificate, my last name removed, and that I would not be responsible for any child support, since all parties agreed that my cousin was her father. Marisol was stunned. She yelled at me. She begged me not to do this to Luna, that I am her father because I raised her, and as pathetic as it sounds now, but if Luna didn't act that way towards me, if she hadn't said those things, I would have agreed. There were times when I wanted to reach out to her and try to make it work, but then I would look at Luna's continuous text messages to her friends, her real father and her mother, and refocus on my determination. To this day, I don't know what hurts more. Being lied to by a woman you thought was the love of your life, or having a son you tried to make your life better, give the world to, cast you aside like you were trash. The judge was quiet for quite a while, reading page after page after page of text messages. In the end, he agreed with me. I was not financially responsible for Luna and my name could be removed. My attorney also filed a motion to have the courts go after my cousin for child support, and a motion to sue my cousin in civil court for all the money I had spent raising Luna. Private schools, dance lessons, Girl Scouts, horseback riding lessons. Everything I have spent on that child, and after my lawyer explained to the judge that my cousin committed fraud by knowingly allowing me to raise his daughter, and not offering me any help or financial support. It was a Hail Mary, and the judge agreed. I didn't bother to look at Marisol when the judge made her decision. I didn't bother to listen to her as she walked out of the courtroom. I didn't care to hear her cry. She was telling me that she had only cheated on me once and had been faithful to me ever since. I just didn't care anymore. A few weeks later my ex called me, shocked that I stopped paying for Luna's private schools and all her activities, and I told her to call her baby's father before hanging up. Luna even called me, for the first time since this whole ordeal, and calls me crying, that she has to go to public school, that they were moving to the old neighborhood and how scared she was and how she wanted us to be a family again. I told her to go see her real father, the man she really loved, and ask him. I yelled at her, told her that not only had I known for years, but I read all the text messages, the back and forth, and, by her own words, she was thankful that a ruffian like me wasn't her father, even though I haven't been a ruffian since the day I knew I was going to be a father. After that I hung up the phone on her. I thought about breaking up with her countless times. I thought about breaking up with my cousin, but I made him pay. He had to pay me $500,000. $500,000 that was all mine, and not a penny belonged to my ex because she agreed to the lump sum. I didn't care that the money came from the church. I was hurting. I left New York soon after, went to Idaho, as far away from New York as possible. I picked a state and a city at random and left. I opened a new store, got a house, but for 2 years I had trust issues. For 2 years, I saw a therapist, anger management, went to anger rooms. It was difficult. Until I went back to church, and ironically there I met my fiancée Jocelyn. And well, so far in a few days I will bring out a second part of my life journey. Stay tuned.